So, in this short series, I'm going to talk about a few aspects of Argentina that I really miss while not being there. And some aspects will be about tango, while others will be less directly about tango because I'll be talking about Argentine like culture, about Buenos Aires. But I think these things will be still be interesting for people who have been to Buenos Aires who are or have never been and they are still interested in going, because even though they're not directly related to tango, I think it's about the cultural context that your trip to Buenos Aires takes place in. And myself, I have a very deep passion for Buenos Aires and Argentina, also apart from tango. Of course, these things are very related to me, but I can also really enjoy the country without dancing. And this in this series, I'm going to highlight a few things that I find yes, that I deeply miss when I'm not there, and that I also think are quite characteristic of the place. So I wanted to start today with one aspect, and that's the most obvious aspect for the part of my audience that loves to dance tango, because you never know whoever else finds these videos on YouTube. But for my main audience who are tango dancers, I would say that obviously the thing I really miss is the possibility to dance tango in Buenos Aires. And you have to understand that, for example, if you watch this and you live in Buenos Aires and you dance tango there, or maybe you live in a big capital in Europe or the US or wherever where there's a lot of tango, that there are a lot of places in the world where this where there's just less on offer, and you cannot always go and do the thing you want. And I live in the Netherlands, which is a country with it's a very densely populated country, and it also has a lot of different tango scenes, and you can travel to other places if you want. Well, in bigger countries like Germany, it would be a bit harder to go from one corner of the country to the other in one evening. In Holland, that is possible, even though it might not be comfortable. It's still possible. So while I'm obviously fortunate not to be living somewhere, for example, in Africa, where there's no tango at all, or where there might be very little of it, so there's a lot of countries like that, and I'm relatively fortunate to live here. But still, it can be a big sacrifice to travel somewhere, and especially seasoned dancers, they tend to have more problems with, for example, the floor craft being bad, or the music not being to their liking, or not finding people they want to dance with. And it can get a little lonely sometimes. And of course, I could be traveling more and going to more places, but the thing is that if we're comparing it to a place like Buenos Aires, everything is just so it's either distant, or I have to like put in a lot of work to get there, and it's hard to switch to another place. And just coming to my point here, like in Buenos Aires, you just have to like milongas can be quite apart sometimes, but I think they're still in your reach, at your reach. And what I find the most important thing about Buenos Aires is that you have so much choice where to go. And of course, there are like within Buenos Aires, there are different scenes. So some milongas are more for like a younger crowd, and others are more for like a traditional milonguero crowd. Some scenes might be for professional dancers, others might be for experimental dancing. I don't know, but you just have so much to choose from, and uh, that's obviously. I mean, I want to say that's an obvious thing that you have more choice in Buenos Aires, and in Europe, a lot of people nowadays they go to events, so people who have a lot of money, so people who are not me, they go to encuentros, marathons, so they travel all the time, and they find what they want there because the level tends to be higher, the music tends to be better, and that's just things that are really good. But if you're in Buenos Aires, so you can choose. Like I know some people who choose between this and going to Buenos Aires, and then they still go to Buenos Aires because while they're there for a few months or whatever, well, months is a bit long, but let's say they're there for a month, and they can just get all their concentrated dancing there without traveling any further. And that's still something I personally really enjoy about being there. Is that it's been quite some years for me, but if I had the option to travel, I would definitely go more often because I just like how you have this scene with so many local people essentially, but also people visiting. And of course, I'm not particularly saying anything new in this video with regard to this to the luxury you have in Buenos Aires. And there are things you can say, like some people might say that things used to be better in Buenos Aires, and that a lot of people have good dancers are no longer there, or that some people who came traveling don't no longer go to Buenos Aires, but they go to these events instead. But I still think, for me at least, because I'm talking about my opinion here, Buenos Aires is such a magic place, because you just have all these options available to you, and that's some one of the things I miss the most. Like, I'm not really like a big city person. Like, I like villages and I like nature, but when I'm in Buenos Aires, one of the great things is that you just the stuff is just so accessible. And yeah, there are other things I could say about this. For example, I still feel that tango in Buenos Aires is the most authentic tango you'll find ever in the world, anywhere in the world. So when I'm there, I actually feel like I'm more immersed in the source of this. And again, that's a thing a lot of people would contest nowadays, because they say, like, yeah, I can dance at events in Europe and I'm really well off there, or in the US, and I don't need to go to Buenos Aires. But for me personally, I just feel that um, it's so special to be there, and I cannot really find that feeling anywhere else so far. And maybe if I were like one of these dancers who dance all over the world all year, so to say, maybe I would have a different opinion. But with the little exposure I get, just being in one place, it's really a dream to be in Buenos Aires, and that's why some of my best friends, tango friends, return there every year or several times a year. So well, that's mostly what I wanted to say about tango. I might add in a little more comments at some point, because what makes this um, tango scene so unique is that it has to do with a lot of like informal rules and norms in the milongas that make Buenos Aires tango so special. But I think I cannot put everything in one video, so I'll let that be for now. In the next video, we're going to talk more generally about the city and its culture. And yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about that too.